Hello there and welcome to the Bicycle Diaries and welcome to week 7 of my cycle training plan. I'm down here in a place called Emsworth enjoying a drop of the old February sunshine, and as you can see the weather is very wet and windy, and according to the weather forecast app on my iPhone it's set to stay like this for the next 10 days or so. Now, as you can imagine, I'm not overly enchanted with riding in this type of weather, so it looks like I'm going to have to be stuck on the turbo for the next few days, doing things like Zwift and Kinomap. Now, you could argue that I'm being a little bit of a princess. I mean, it's not exactly like it's hurricane force or anything. We had that last week. I just don't fancy going out and riding in this sort of weather, not least because my Specialized is off the road due to the wheel issues. Now that means I would have to take either my Cannondale or my Trek out, and with the roads being as wet as they are, it would just ruin the bike. Now obviously not being able to go out and do longer rides actually out on the road is going to make my training a little bit challenging, particularly when I've only got about 7 months to go before the big event in late September, early October, and less than a month to go now before I do my first 100-kilometer ride of the year. But that said, the grand totals for the year so far are 465 kilometers ridden, 2,725 meters climbed, and 20 hours and 30 minutes of seat time. Now, the more eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that my meters climbed has actually gone down since last week, and that's because I've been using Strava just to look at the numbers, and that's taken things like the Zwift rides that I've done into account and added the meters in Watopia to the grand total. So I've just sat down and taken all of that into account to give a slightly more accurate figure.
Looks like the weather forecast was wrong, so let's get out before it starts raining.
Over meadows, inside sprung grass, lungs breathing in the darkness, love down low, scattered in the gravel, vapor escapes us in thin air. Find the strength in my shortcomings, lies don't say, come on, spend money I try, but no feelings and fruit can make this holy, holy snow. Lays on me, feels like an injury, soaked in luxury, a leopard in a hurry. Where's that waterfall, the source of it all? Where's the essence of me? Find the strength in my shortcomings.
You join me today on my 4th ride of the week, and today I'm actually riding the Buns Bent and Hoe. The other rides I've done this week, I did 2 earlier on Kinomap on the turbo trainer in the garage, and that was basically due to the weather. And then yesterday I tried to go out and do an actual road ride, and after 45 minutes of tinkering with the bike in the sun, within 90 seconds of me starting my ride, the heavens opened with not just rain but massive hailstones as well, so I had to cut that ride short. The weather today, as you can see, is sunny but it is quite cold at about 6 degrees Celsius, and it is incredibly windy. I think we've got 30 kilometre an hour winds, and obviously they're going to change and become headwinds and tailwinds as the ride progresses.
But no feelings so forthcoming. Slowly,
I'm out and about riding my Cannondale today, and that's because my normal winter bike, my Specialized, is off the road. And I think, reading between the lines, I think that the bike has kind of reached the end of its life, really. So yeah, it's the Cannondale at the moment, which is why I'm a little bit precious about the weather that I'm riding in. I'm looking for drier roads because I don't want to get this too wet and mucky. It's proving not too difficult at the moment, although the rain's been pretty torrential the last few days. It dried up overnight, and this wind is making the puddles and all the standing water evaporate quite quickly. Looks like I might be a little out of luck with the weather. I'm about 10 kilometres from home, approaching the last climb, and it's starting to rain. Let's hope I can outrun it. Unfortunately, I don't appear to be having much luck outrunning this rain. If anything, I'm riding straight into it, and unlucky for me, that's my route home. I'll probably get very wet again. Well, I think the rain pixies must have been smiling on me, because it stopped raining. Seemed to be a passing shower, lasted for about 5 or 6 minutes, and it was quite heavy, but doesn't seem to have touched where I am now very much, because the roads are quite dry. Luckily, I don't have too much further until I'm home. On the home straight now, and I'm riding into a block headwind. Hopefully it won't be too much longer before I'm home. Now that I'm home, showered and relaxed, and more importantly away from the risk of having an absolute soaking, I can reflect on today's ride with a little more clarity.
So earlier on today, I was wondering how this week's turbo training sessions have helped me with actually riding on the road. Well, I think basically it all comes down to cadence. When I'm on the turbo trainer, I noticed that my cadence was around 95 revs per minute, where normally on the road it's about 90 revs per minute. Yet today I was clearly trying to maintain that 95 revs per minute and managing it quite successfully. I was also concerned that not actually going out on the road for 3 weeks might have had some kind of detrimental impact on my fitness. Now, while I'm probably not as fit as I would have been had I actually gone out on the road for those 3 weeks, I don't think my fitness has suffered all that much because the turbo training was pretty good training, and consequently on today's ride I didn't feel that bad. So the all-important numbers for this week are: I've ridden 72 kilometers, I've got 4 hours of seat time, and I've climbed 433 meters. And if we go over to Strava to have a look at the fitness scores, you can see that on my first ride of the week it was 31, and then on my second turbo training ride of the week it was 32. For the first proper road ride in about 3 weeks it was still 32, and then today on the Buns Bent and Hoe it went up to 34. Now, while I have done 4 rides this week, 2 of those were on the turbo trainer and only accounted for 24 kilometers of my total 72. All in all, it's not been the best week on the bike, and consequently I'm now in real doubt about doing my first milestone event of my first 100 kilometer ride of the year. So I may have no choice but to put that back a little bit to, say, the middle of April, and if I do that, that will give me 6 weeks to train for it. One of the things that riding on the turbo over the last few weeks has shown me though is the importance of bike fit. Now, I don't know if you were watching the vlogs this time last year, but if you were, you'll know that I was experiencing some knee pain. And it's no coincidence that I was also doing a fair bit of training on the turbo trainer this time last year. Basically, what was happening was on the bike that I use on the turbo, when my foot was at the bottom of the pedal stroke, my knee was going too far back and causing that pain. So what I've had to do is raise the saddle a bit and then move the seat forward a bit. And now consequently the knee pain is almost gone. And as I said earlier out on the road, I'm now riding my Cannondale for the rest of this winter season. And interestingly enough, the position on the Cannondale is very similar to the new position I've set up on the turbo bike. And consequently, the Cannondale feels absolutely amazing to ride. It's only the first ride of the season that I've done with it, but it just feels absolutely amazing and I'm really enjoying riding it. I've had quite a few people ask me about the wheel on my Specialized. Again, if you were watching the vlogs a few weeks ago, you'll know that I had a mechanical and I was unable to ride my Specialized, which is my normal winter bike. Well, I've had the wheel off, I've had it looked at, and basically the hub is cracked. And according to the chap that I showed it to, he was saying that the wheel cannot be saved. It's basically a very expensive hub to replace. And it's not really cost effective. So I think that wheel is a total write-off. One piece of good news this week is that I've been to the doctors to have one of these regular health checkup things. My doctor checked my breathing, she checked my heart rate, she checked my blood pressure, she even gave me a blood test checking for everything from diabetes to snow blindness. And while she said I need to lose a few kilos, so no surprises there, she also said that basically she wasn't worried about me at all. So while the wheel might be a bit of a write-off, at least there's still a few miles left in me yet. The absolute headline this week, though, is that I now in fact have a place on the Prudential London 100. So I have to give a massive thank you to my cycling chum Kathy. Basically she was offered a place by a charity here in the UK called the National Trust, but she's already now riding for Alzheimer's research, so she very kindly transferred her place over to me. Now, if you don't know, the National Trust here in the UK is a charity that looks after forests and houses of historical interest. So there's no minimum sponsorship, but I will be setting up a Just Giving page if you fancy donating. So with the stakes raised somewhat now, my plan for next week is to go out and continue chipping away at my base miles. Fingers crossed we won't be hit by yet another storm and the weather will play ball and allow me to go out and do some much longer rides, including my first 50 kilometre ride of the year so far, and that will be the longest ride that I've done in 2020, and then that will hopefully allow me to start building up my endurance a bit quicker. Thanks for watching.